Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Council for Tuesday, August 5th, 2014, to order. We will begin with an invocation led by Councillor Lane, followed by the singing of the national anthem led by Councillor Papp. I would ask all that are able to rise.
Lord, give us this day your strength and courage to do your will. Grant that the members of Pelham Council demonstrate humility, listen with an open mind, and show wisdom in all their deliberations and matters of business placed before them. Bring to this council honor, trust, and dignity to work on behalf of all people of the town of Pelham. Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patron of, in all thy sons' command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, councillors. Ladies and gentlemen, our first item of business is approval of the agenda. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that the agenda for the August 5th, 2014 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest, that is any conflicts of interest and the general nature thereof. Do any members have any conflicts of interest they need to disclose at this time?
None, Mr. Mayor.
There are none. Madam Clerk, can you please note that in the minutes? Now we'll be moving to hearings of presentations, delegations, including the region report. And the first is a presentation by the 31 Canadian Brigade Group, the Stalwart Guardian 2014 exercise, and it's Major Van Morick. Thank you very much for joining us, especially coming in from London, specifically for this presentation. So thank you very much, Major.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for having us anyway, and to just give you a quick oversight on what it's all about and why we'll be in your backyard.
Thank you.
We'll just go over the reserves, where they are and what they do in Ontario, exercise, the community support, hopefully some economic benefits, and questions if I can. I will answer them. If not, I'll be more than happy to get back to you. So reserves in Ontario, the exercise that's happening here is part of 4 Division, and they are the Ontario Division. Within that, there's 31, 32, and 33 Brigade. 31 Brigade being the biggest brigade and all, but all 3 brigades will have participants within this exercise. There's approximately 5,500 soldiers within 43 units. And unlike myself, they come from, it could be one of you sitting here, they come from all walks of life. They're reservists. Reserves in Ontario, they train throughout the calendar year, basically to get to where this exercise will be here, the Stalwart Guardian. And this year it's planned for 2,100 troops, and right now I think we're at 1,900 or almost 2,000 that are in the tasking brick for that. There's one thing that changed here this morning on this. Actually, people will start showing up here on Sunday, on the 10th of August, building up until the 16th, when the main bodies start to arrive. So the majority of the troops will be coming in on that day by bus or by vehicle, military vehicle packets. They'll start on the 16th. They'll go right straight through to the 22nd, and on the 22nd, the exercise starts to wind down. On the 23rd, it's completely over. And on the 24th, everybody should be going home except for a small rear party of a couple hundred people that still be around, getting the equipment back and cleaning things up, making sure that all environmental aspects and stuff are done with the land that we are using from private people around the area. So every exercise needs a scenario, and this one here is really fictional. How it works is we've been invaded by West Niles and Frisians are coming down. They started to come across. They've started through Quebec. Now they're in the Welland Canal area, and we're doing a domestic operations within Canada. The units that will be here will be located, the Armored Recce will be off in Smithville. The LCC, which is the land command component, will be just in Welland on the north at the at the fairgrounds, Welland Fairgrounds. 32 TBG, which is Territorial Battle Group, the engineers, and then there'll be the Op 4 is the bad guys, the enemy, and 31 Territorial and 33 Territorial are the main components that will be within the Niagara area. Task Force, the AOR, the area of operation, will be 31 in the north, with 32 in the southwest and 33 in the southeast. One thing is Pelham is located in the 32, which is actually your guys in their own backyard, because the majority of those people are from the Toronto, Niagara area. And Recce will be coming from the northwest, sweeping down in through your area with all the cool gear that they have, which I'll show you shortly. So basically, within the area, there'll be people dressed like me with a helmet and a weapon. Weapon will be has a little, like you see on TV, beeps when you shoot it, so they can tell if they're dead when we're playing war games. There'll be the G-Wagons, and this will be part of the recovery guys that are coming through your area and patrolling and checking out things, make sure that apparently it's safe. This will be the troop carrying vehicles, TCVs as we're called. Be supporting the troops, bringing them around from the area. This is the Lab 3, which is actually built in London. This is about the coolest piece of kit we'll have here at this time, actually. It's very nice. It's, it is pretty cool. You'll see some of these parked everywhere, and up top there's actually a TV with thermal imaging and stuff like that for night. So you'll see some of those parked around, possibly in your area as well. And hopefully within the benefits that we're, the community will be supportive to the Canadian Armed Forces, showing that that you're there with us doing realistic training and in sort of a realistic setting within your backyard. Economic benefits, hopefully from rental fees and stuff like that, and I'm actually one of the guys that does up the contracts, so I know that there is some impact within the area. And hopefully the troops, they are going to be allowed to purchase coffee and pizzas and stuff like that if they so choose. And it's also an opportunity for some of these agencies to work with the federal government, and again, in your backyard, as we like to say. And that is pretty much it, quick and to the point. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. If I cannot, like I said earlier, I'll be more than happy to get you an answer.
Thank you very much, Major, for your presentation. I wonder if any members of council have any questions for the Major. Councillor Ribiak?
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation, Major. My question is really a technical one. You've got 2,100 people in the area for a week or so. Where are they living? Are they camping out? Are they in hotels?
Actually, yes, we've gone out and they've done land use agreements with some of the companies. There's a wind farm, the one I know of, there's a wind farm down off to the southwest, or southeast, sorry. They'll be living there. So they'll be living on private land, or some of it, I believe, is the Welland Canal land. Yeah, they'll actually be living out and about. They're not sleeping in hotels or any of that. They're actually under canvas.
Okay. Neat.
Okay,
Sounds like
thank
fun.
you. Others?
Can I drive one of those vehicles?
Unless you join the reserves.
Unless I join the reserve, right?
But they are trying to do a day for the public to come out and see.
I was gonna say, yeah, you're gonna have a public day we can,
Yes, that's by no means my expertise, but I do know that they are planning one, and it will be propagated through the local media
okay.
on when that day will happen.
That is one of the things, Touch a Truck, I think, is what we have at Summerfest, and also a few years ago at one of our parades, we had some military equipment, and people found it quite interesting, so
And they are,
it'd be good to do.
Council Richard, right?
Yes.
I was telling him that the airdrop right now, they are going to do an airdrop in your area at the airport. It has been approved. I was just at a meeting the other day, so depending on weather and a few other things, they will be doing an airdrop within your area.
Great, thank you. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It has been mentioned that at Canada Day parades in the past, I think we got from Lincoln and Welland Regiment some military vehicles to be in a parade, some very interesting vehicles, as Councillor Pat brings up. Is there a possibility for a Canada Day to get you people to bring one or two of these things down to participate in our Canada Day parade?
Yes, actually, it's called Op Connection is a thing.
Perfect.
I don't want to speak out of turn, but all you have to do is put a letter or proposal up into, if you can actually put it through 56 Field or the Lincoln and Welland unit here, and that CO he has an OPSO that will jump on it and send it up through the proper chains for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see our director is writing that down, and I think we will follow up on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Major. Anything further? Thank you very much for your presentation. We look forward to seeing this, and thank you for putting us on alert that we'll be seeing people like you and those vehicles in our area. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much for your time.
Good luck on your exercise.
And have a good evening.
Thank you.
very
You
much.
too. Thanks, Major. It has been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor King, that the information presented by the 31 Canadian Brigade Group regarding exercise Stalworth Guardian 2014 be received. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks again, Major. Appreciate it. Thank you. The next item is a presentation by the YMCA to Pelham Council, and it includes Janet St. Amand, who's the CEO of the YMCA, and Leanne Standrick, who is the president of the board. So thank you very much. And I think our clerk is assisting here with the changeover to the next presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Mayor Dave Augustine and Pelham Council members, I'm pleased to speak to you today on behalf of the YMCA Board of Directors. As a volunteer of the Y Board, I'm proud to provide to Pelham Council an overview of the Niagara Y, along with Janet St. Amand, the CEO, knowing that many of you already have significant experience and knowledge with respect to the YMCA Niagara. As indicated, my name is Leanne Standrick. I'm currently the volunteer board chair. And tonight we'd like to begin with more formal dialogue regarding the exploration of the potential partnership between the town of Pelham and, of course, the YMCA of Niagara regarding your plans for the development of multipurpose community center. Specifically, as to the agenda, we'll provide a background on YMCA of Niagara, outline a number of YMCA partnership service examples that are currently in place in Niagara, review the values that we feel are required to develop that type of strong partnership, and of course review the benefits of the partnership with the YMCA and canvass with you the next steps. I wanted to first acknowledge that there's several leaders from both of our organizations that have engaged in dialogue up to this point in time over the past several months. And this certainly assists with the town of Pelham in making the decision, of course, that you're asked to make. And we certainly appreciate, and I can say that the board appreciates and senior leadership appreciates that open dialogue and the sharing of information and research that has happened thus far to date. This, of course, is a work in progress. And both organizations, I think, need to work through this process together to consider the nature of the development and how that might work. Tonight we wanted to provide a foundational information background about the why and how we view the ingredients of a successful partnership, what that's going to look like. So this is a start. And there's many more steps, of course, that we're going to take and decision points that both organizations are going to have to look at as we move through this process. So as you may know, the YMCA of Niagara is a charity and it's open to all. It provides leadership and opportunities for people within our community to grow in spirit, mind, and body. And we've been doing this for roughly 154 years in our community. We are mission-driven, values-based, and we're open to all. So inclusiveness is an important element of what we do. We have a local YMCA volunteer board, but are linked as well to YMCA Canada and the YMCA World Council. In Niagara, we are the largest single provider of recreation to children, youth, and families, and health-enhanced services to adults, licensed childcare, day camp, programs and services for older adults, employment opportunities for young people, and volunteer development opportunities. Our core programs are day camp, licensed childcare, Ontario Early Years, membership services, child youth outreach and youth leadership, and of course employment and newcomer services. What we have here is a map basically that depicts all of the touch points of YMCA Niagara throughout the Niagara region. I think it speaks volumes because, as I indicated, it's the touch points of where we are in the community. It's how we outreach to our community and the members within our community. And several of the programs are offered in schools, churches, facilities, whether they're owned by others or whether they're actually owned by the YMCA Niagara. And over my last, I'd say 6 years of volunteering with the board, this map changes all the time. And the reason it changes all the time is because we're responsive to the needs in our community. And in part, we need to do that so that we can remain relevant to our community. More specifically, we serve approximately 92,000 people in approximately 112 YMCA sites. Within our membership base, approximately 66% of the members are linked as a family. And for me, this is important because when we're a family, we're busy, we're off doing our separate things, the kids are busy. Everyone's got the busy lives that offer few opportunities for families to come together. And so in this sense, with that focus, the YMCA, in my opinion, for what it's worth, certainly strengthens families in our community. About 50% of the YMCA participants are children and youth. We are open to all with over 15,000 YMCA participants receiving financial assistance. And again, that goes to the inclusiveness piece. We encourage a culture of volunteerism and giving back to the community. And on that note, the YMCA has over 2,400 donors from the Niagara region and approximately 850 volunteers. Currently, we have approximately 1,500 employees, and if you can imagine, 25% are full-time students. So we encourage employment in youth, and of course, a positive first job experience for young people within our community, and certainly we believe, again, that helps strengthen our community. From a financial perspective, the YMCA has $27.7 million by way of operating revenue, and the YMCA financial assistance offered is roughly $1.6 million. And as a local charity, we continually reinvest in our Niagara community. I'd like to now invite Janet to share with you some information about our current YMCA partnerships.
Good evening. And as Leanne mentioned, I'd like to describe a few unique and successful YMCA partnerships between the Y and other organizations in Niagara. We believe that through working with the right partners on the right things, we truly are able to do more together than we could do on our own. We have a solid track record of partnerships and service agreements, and this trend is growing both locally as well as nationally. So the first one I'd like to share is the Port Colborne YMCA branch, which opened in 2013. It is the most recent example. And the Y has a long-term service agreement with the municipality to provide health and family programs within their Valley Health and Wellness Center. The second one of significance is the Niagara Falls YMCA branch, which opened in 2005. Hard to believe, it's almost 10 years ago. And it is a long-term partnership with the City of Niagara Falls to provide health and family programs within the McBain Community Center. Each of these partnerships were unique in their formation, and they are reflective of the community, the environment, and the agreements are also very specific, but the outcomes are the same, and that is really strengthening individuals and the community. Other examples of service partners and service agreements that are more program-based includes cardiac rehab, which is offered through our membership centers through the Niagara Health Systems. It includes RISE, which is the alternative to school suspension offered by DSBN, located at the St. Catharines Walker Family YMCA. SWIS is a settlement worker in school program targeted to serve children who are arriving new to Canada, and it's located in the school systems, and that's a partnership with our two main school boards along with CEC. We have decades of offering employment services funded primarily through Employment Ontario, the Ministry of Training of Colleges and Universities. Ontario Early Years, again, is another important program that the Y offers, and that is a partnership with the Ministry of Education along with other OEYC deliverers in Niagara. And then we have smaller arrangements with local charitable and not-for-profit groups such as FACTS, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and Special Olympics. So again, you can see the range of services and partnerships that the Y currently holds. As we consider partnerships, we sort of filter those opportunities through what the Y values. And what is important to the Y in any partnership is this. Firstly, it's aligned with the Y's mission and values. Secondly, we balance both the social and the fiscal responsibilities. We want to ensure that we continue to be open to all. We want to ensure that there is a quality focus, whether we're talking programs, whether we're talking facilities or systems. We also want to continue to encourage volunteerism, philanthropy, and focus on a long-term vision. Based on discussions we've had with your leaders and the information gleaned from the reports that you have provided to date, we believe that this is what's important to you regarding a partnership. You want to develop a community hub that brings people together, and that's part of your larger development plan, and that will enhance health and wellness for your residents. You want to generate that sense of civic pride for Pelham. You want to ensure good stewardship for a new physical asset while ensuring efficient operations. You want to support economic development and strengthen the fabric of Pelham's community life through a more inclusive approach to service for the long term. And I'm sure there's more, but that's a good start, and that helps us better understand what's important to you. So what makes a partnership work? Our experience shows that the ingredients of a successful partnership includes trust, and sometimes that's not so easy to do, it's easier to say. Good planning process and planning on three levels. One is the development, the physical development. Secondly is the agreement. And thirdly is the operational agreement. Clear expectations and a common understanding of what's important to each other. A willingness to change, to let go some of the old ways and welcome new ways of doing things, along with the alignment of goals and long-term vision. So one of the questions I would expect Pelham leaders are asking, so what are the benefits of a Y as a partner? What do they bring to the table? So the Y is has focus on the charitable mission and our values. We have a positive partnership track record. We can offer complementary aquatic services via our Niagara Centre YMCA, plus a water broader YMCA access of services. We would continue to encourage charitable and volunteer giving back to community. We bring strong facility management and risk management practices. We focus on both financial management and community services, along with financial planning, strategic planning. Again, some of the partnership principles that we would be looking at is ensuring that the quality of programs and physical assets would be maintained. We would maintain the YMCA brand. Fiscal viability in everything we do is part of that successful formula. The provision of core YMCA programs and services as part of the membership model of service. And we want to continue to remain relevant and respond to emerging needs. We're also focused on a long-term commitment and find that balance between social and financial viability. You're familiar with our membership model, and it offers choice, convenience, value-added leadership development. A long-term involvement in activity means a healthier long-term lifestyle, and being open to everyone continues to be important. Many of you may be familiar with the WISE approach to being open to all, but we do offer financial assistance, and it is available to families and individuals who can't afford to participate. 1 out of 4 individuals within the Y are currently financially assisted, and it's done in a way that is confidential and fair. We offer the level of assistance based on individuals' specific situations. And our Strong Kids campaign supports financial assistance for kids. YMCA services can be accessed in a variety of ways, including membership, day fees through volunteerism, and along with the financial assistance program. We also offer various other programs like day camp, which are outside of the membership core. So as we look at our next steps, I think just to acknowledge some of the steps to date, included access to the research that you have conducted, market research, as well as some of your business plans. And again, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Both the YMCA board and council, I believe, have made the decision to explore potential partnership further. And more recently was the YMCA hosted tours of other YMCA and municipal partnership facilities and agreements. And our recent trip with Darren, Carrie, and Vicki included a trip to the facility in Kamoka, Ontario, and that is a photograph of that. It seemed to be one that was the most relevant to this current situation. And then potential next steps is the Y's been invited to participate on the Pelham Advisory Committee, which I think is taking place Thursday. And so we will be doing that. And secondly is a memo of understanding with both council and the YMCA approval, a detailed partnership and service agreement and development plan, and then potentially a final agreement. Within each of these steps, of course, there are decision-making points for both organizations. And as part of the assessment process for the Y, is both the service complement and the financial viability and its overall impact on Y services. We would be pleased to use the solid market research that you have done as we look at developing our plans. And we also know and understand that as we look at the overall picture of the Y service in Niagara, we know that this decision will also have an impact on the Niagara Centre YMCA, and we want to be thoughtful around what that might look like. This situation offers both opportunities and challenges, and we want to ensure that both we and council do our due diligence as we look at this situation. And we look forward to future discussions with you as we review our work and work through these steps together. So I would pause here, and both Leanne and I would welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We greatly appreciate it. And I wonder if any members of council have any questions that they might want to ask our presenters. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. We've talked around this issue a number of times with respect to the models that the Y uses for furnishing their services. And I at least have yet to get an answer to that question. Do we pay you? Are you paying us? What are some of the models that you've used in the past in some of your partnership agreements?
Thank
Could
you,
you
Councillor.
expand on that a little bit?
Go ahead. Good question.
Certainly, and the answer to your first question is what do we do? The answer is we don't know yet, because we haven't gone through the process of doing our due diligence. And quite frankly, there are a variety of different agreements out there, and it really depends on the situation. As we look at the viability of a smaller membership base, those arrangements tend to not be self-sufficient. And so there are funds that are provided to ensure that it is viable. For those with a larger membership base, there tends to be greater self-sufficiency. So it really depends on the situation, and that is part of the due diligence that we would be looking to do with you as we explore this potential partnership.
I think that as well speaks to the fact that, again, we're responsive to the community and we do not take an approach of the one-size-fits-all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
I'm still not getting the answer.
I think it sounds, Councillor, that's to come. That answer will come. So
Okay,
maybe the answer or the question might be, in this process that's on the slide before, when will that kind of work its way out? When will the councillor have the answer that he's, is that in the, in the slide before, is that sort of under number 3, the detailed partnership? Is that how that works?
Yes, I think the memo of understanding would help construct some of the principles behind a partnership and some of the decisions you have made to date regarding what the facility would look like. And then the second part is really doing a more a business and program plan that would help determine what is the financial picture, what is the program and service picture, and what are the costs related to, and revenue related to that. And once that detail work is done, then the answer would be there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, does that help?
I'll just ask a follow-up.
Okay, go ahead.
So, what's your view of the memorandum of understanding? What's the context of it, and what degree of commitment is there with the once a memorandum of understanding is signed?
A memorandum of understanding is really a bridging document, and it can take a number of forms depending on the point you're at in your decision-making process. So in this instance, we have talked about defining that in terms of the WISE role. The memorandum of understanding, more specifically, would likely not include any financial obligations. It really is the bridge in order to do the more detailed work required.
Thank you.
That would be my understanding, but I mean, we're open to this process in terms of a number of decision-making steps along the way. Do you have anything that you want to add to that?
legal background, I don't even approach the issue of memo of understanding. But that being said, I think that again, I agree with what Janet has said. The memo of understanding, I think, signifies a commitment of all parties involved, really to sort of shape the process going further and really talk about, in general terms, how the two organizations can fit, and with a view to moving towards a detailed partnership agreement that would address the financial issues and so forth. So the due diligence piece would really fall under and follow the drafting of the memorandum of understanding.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
Would not entering into an MOU preclude continuing a discussion and fleshing out what the Y could bring to the table for the town and looking at the various models that you've used in other communities so that we as a council would assist us in deciding whether we wanted to enter into an MOU and proceed down that path in a very concrete and solid way?
That's what council felt that it wanted to do. I'm sure that would be possible. I think probably more than anything, it's capturing the principles behind a partnership first. And if there's some agreement there, it allows you to take the next step.
Okay, thank you.
It is more of a formalized step for both council as well as the Y board.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, anything further at this time? or-
Not as questions, no.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Others? Councillor King, saw your hand first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. Based on your partnerships in Port Colborne and in Niagara Falls, how much involvement have you had in the development of the member facilities, in the design concept I'm really referring to?
So the answer to that question, we're probably at either ends of the continuum. And in the situation with Niagara Falls, that original development happened with the Y very much involved in the design process from the very beginning. So whereas in Port Colborne, we arrived as a partner quite late in the game, quite frankly, and thus much of the design had been completed, construction had gone underway, and so that also included some changes to the design in order to be able to effectively deliver YMCA services in that construction. So either end, I mean, it is wonderful to be a part of this discussion at a very early stage, given the fact that not only the Y locally has some game in the design business, but we also draw upon our colleagues across Canada to review those designs.
I guess I asked that question, Mr. Mayor, just because I'm wondering whether the Y would consider doing anything differently in terms of a partnership going forward based on the results of those two centers, for example.
Okay. So your preference of the two extremes that you talked about is?
Get us at the front end.
Okay. Thought that was the answer. I didn't want to put the words in your mouth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you both for the presentation. I just want to make sure that I understand, I think, what the direction of the presentation is. The YMCA is a charity, by definition, therefore, non-for-profit. I gather from the presentation that there's a fair participation of volunteer resource to call upon, but you do pay salaries, presumably for administration and for programming. And I'm assuming that there's some money that needs to go into equipment or proprietary stuff perhaps that the YMCA brings. Are there any other fees, dues, whatever, that the YMCA would require out of the funds that you would receive either through through membership or directly from the town. Have I covered pretty much where the fees would go, or is there other money as well?
Let me think how to respond to that.
Well, let me restate.
Yeah.
The money that is paid, either through memberships, if it's enough to cover all of that, I guess we wouldn't have to put anything from the town, or from the town plus memberships. Does all that money stay within this facility? Does any of the money go elsewhere?
Certainly, as an organization, we would look at any operation that we do to ensure that it's funded to the degree that we can be efficient, maintain risk management, health and safety systems, appropriate training and development for staff and volunteers, appropriate administrative support. So that would be built in with all of our operations. We do pay dues to YMCA Canada, and in turn receive benefit in terms of program training, standards, YMCA branding support. That's part of how we serve community.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, follow up? So if you were to estimate perhaps on the experience that you have both in Port Colborne, Niagara Falls, and maybe elsewhere, what the relationship is, what the ratio is between the money that stays from funds or from either from the town or through memberships within the facility, and how much goes out, I would think that it's a fairly large gap between the two, I think. Offhand?
Are you able to answer that?
Please allow us time to do, I mean, you're asking some fairly detailed questions. Yeah. Please allow us time to do the due diligence, and once you have the material in front of you, it would probably make more sense. I mean, anything that we receive, for example, from Y Canada, it's part of our overall operations, and any local operation would benefit from that. So, I mean, it's not just an in and out, it is how those dollars are being used to strengthen what we do and how we serve community.
Final comment, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Questions now, comments perhaps when we consider the resolution.
Okay, I'll save until then. But thank you very much for your answers.
Thank you. Others? Councillor Papp?
Thank you for the presentation, and I have to restrain myself since I've been involved in many ways with the Y. Would you see the development of the terms of reference for the MOU as one that would balance off the interests, obviously, of us as the corporation and yourselves in such a manner that it's for mutual benefit? And what I'm getting at is that I think along the lines of what Councillor Ribiak and Councillor Kersey is, that we're not entering into a relationship to lose money either way, or else that would be just false. And I know you entered it late in the decisions or the operations of the Port Colborne model, but in others, the always thing is that it becomes sustainable, and that it's worth and relevant, and it's resilient, because I know several situations where the organizations were in deep trouble and were helped out of that trouble. The dilemma we run into, and I'll say it because we're kind of dancing around, is we also have people that have private interests in delivering programs, and I think we need to feel comfortable in addressing those along with what you're going to be providing. So I guess it's sort of a long question, but basically that those things are balanced out during the course of discussions, I presume, right? Because as you mentioned, this is a first step, right? We haven't, is that fair to say?
Clearly, today's presentation was one to ensure that everyone had the same information about who we are as a Y, as a local charity, and how we serve community. And then secondly is to indicate the principles that we feel are important behind a partnership, and then what we have heard from you around what's important for you relating to a partnership. So really, this was a foundational presentation to help begin the conversation in a more formal fashion to allow us to look at moving forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Papp, anything further?
No, that's fine,
Other
Mr. Mayor, I'm
members of-
done.
Thank you. Other members of council? Thank you very much for your presentation. We sincerely appreciate it. I do have a motion here. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that the information presented by the YMCA be received and that staff be directed to draft a memorandum of understanding with the YMCA for council's review and consideration at our next regular meeting. Mr. CEO, I just wondered if you could make a couple of comments about the recommendation that's here in terms of the MOU, given what council said.
Yes, Mr.
Any
Mayor.
questions?
I view this to be much the same process as what we had followed with Wellspring. You explore the opportunities. One of the things that I've learned in meeting with Janet and her staff, along with doing some tours, is that although it may be, and it was for me at first too, difficult to understand the WISE model, because they don't really have a model per se. They have circumstances to which they develop agreements for. And until we understand the relationship potential between us and the Y, we won't be able to proceed to answer the questions that some of the councillors have raised. So I view this as being a good opportunity to establish the framework. It's an MOU is not a legally binding document. It's simply an understanding, and it paves the way, if there's agreement and consensus, to start looking at the development of a formal arrangement or agreement, if you will, that would outline the roles of each of the respective organizations. So at this time, our recommendation is to say, well, let's explore the MOU and let's put something together that will provide greater clarity for council and for the Y board, so that then both respective organizations can determine if they're prepared to explore the drafting of an actual formal agreement.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. CEO. That's, I think, helpful. I had Councillor Kersey and then Councillor Ribbiak who wanted to make comments. Go ahead,
I'd like to
Councillor.
ask Mr. CAO a question. So in your view, entering into a memorandum of understanding, would that preclude us putting together an RFP for a call for private sector involvement in the facility, or for us to pursue an internal option, to examine an internal option of providing the services?
Mr. CEO?
To answer the councillor's questions, Mr. Mayor, you could do both. You can do anything. Again, there's no set agreement in place. If you were to look at an MOU and decide that that's not what you wanted to do as a council, you don't have to enter into it. If you decide as a council to move down the road of going a public procurement type process for services, that's council's discretion. Those are decisions that council can make. But having said that, my recommendation is to explore the opportunity with the Y as a non-profit organization, because we have, as a community, made an investment in the well and Y in cash, and that Niagara Center, sorry, that we have a stake in as a community. So without exploring the potential implications as well of a recreational center on a Y that we've invested in, I don't think is, again, it's something that I would want to look at further and understand the implications. So if it makes sense, then it's great. We can proceed, but if it doesn't, then council's under no obligation to enter into any agreement with anyone.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor?
Well, just as a follow-up comment to that, how can we as business people and leaders in our community make a reasonable, fiscally responsible decision if we haven't looked at alternatives? If we only have one option on the table, and that's the only thing that we have to evaluate, we have no yardstick to compare to. So, and this has been, I think I'm being consistent with what I've said all the way along, is that we need comparatives. So we haven't seen any other models other than the Y. And it may be that the consultants that have been involved are extremely wise in this area and learned, and we need to follow them. But as a business person, I feel that it would be important for us, as our fiscal responsibility to the community, to at least look at the other options, and before we pursue an MOU in depth. I don't say we should discontinue the discussions with the Y. I think that would be most helpful, and it would help to bring the material that several of us have asked about tonight to the table. And if we want to call it an MOU, that's fine. But at the same time, I think we should be calling for the other pieces of information which will help us then say to our public, listen, we've looked at all of the aspects of this problem, and the Y is the provider of choice because A, B, C, and D. And so that's why I'm trying to get some clarity on what this MOU really means. If it means that we're committed to the Y going forward, I think it's unfair for us to mislead the Y, at least from my perspective, until such time as we've pursued the other avenues that we've discussed. We have providers in our own community that provide services on a fee-for-service basis. Perhaps they'd be interested in providing some of the services that we want to offer. I don't know that until we go and look at that aspect. But we should be able to look those people in the face and at least say to them, we've given you the opportunity. We've looked at all the factors. And this is the reason we've taken the track that we've chosen to take. So if I'm belaboring the point about the MOU, that's why. It's not a reflection on the credentials of the Y. We all know about the Y. We know the credentials well. It's about doing our fiscal due diligence. They talked in their presentation numerous times about due diligence and doing the responsible thing. And I think we owe that to our community. So I would be comfortable moving ahead with the MOU aspect of this motion, but I think we need to add on there that we pursue an RFP for public services and also to look at the internally provided option as well. So that when we get to that point where we're going to make a decision, we have all the data that we need to make a rational decision about this. We have time. We have, it's not on, like we have a building that's rising out of the ground. Let's take the time to do this correctly.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fully supportive of the motion and moving ahead with discussions with the YMCA. The presentation this evening, I think, reminded me and it illustrated, I think, very well that when the YMCA is involved in a project like this, their objective is the outcome, the impact that their efforts will have on residents. They're not looking at the management model as an end in itself, as the raison d'etre for their business is to provide management. That's not it at all. The raison d'etre is the outcome at the other end. So that puts them in a very consistent position with our own. They have 150 years of experience doing it, so I don't think, as Councillor Kersey said, I don't think any of us are not knowledgeable of their effectiveness and their competence. So I think this is a good direction to go. I think that if a nonprofit is able to produce that kind of effective outcome, I think it's going to be fiscally better for the town as well to be involved in that. I'm not at all opposed to finding other information from other sources. I think we ought to have those comparisons in hand. I don't think, frankly, based on what I heard this evening, that the Y is going to be at all concerned with any kind of a competition in that regard. But I'm certainly strongly in favor of moving ahead with this discussion. I think it would be a good move.
Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors? Councillor Papp?
Well, notwithstanding and greatest respect to Councillor Kersey, I understand his position. I would suggest that as we move forward with the MOU, that the other business operational models are considered as part of those discussions. Let's face it, as we go down this road with the YMCA, always in the eyes of the community is what other options did we look at? And I think we can do that and come back with what we hope will be for our best interest. So you're right, Councillor Kersey, it doesn't look like, we went to one source. The reality is, though, that there's other components that are going to come into play in this. And besides the partnership with the Y running the facility, there's going to be other services and stuff going on in this community center, which could involve a multitude, a triad of different types of partnerships, which, let's just say, I'm familiar with in another entity where they went through this process and they came back with one group basically running the building and taking care of it. So I want us to keep going ahead, but notwithstanding the fact that we keep in mind the other business, before even an RFP, we keep in mind what these other options are for us, and that it's seen that we've given it fair diligence.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think exploring the possibilities of a MOU will bring to light if there are some deficiencies in where we're going with this, and then we could be looking at other options. And I think that the starting point is the MOU.
Right.
We want to know exactly what they have to offer. They want to know exactly what we're looking for. Once we have that conversation, that will open up other areas of conversation, I believe. And in fact, if there is a deficiency, if we need to go somewhere else, that I think will give us an indication of that. And I'm fully confident that we can get something together with that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Others? Just going to comment to build on what Councillor Durley has said just now, and based on the discussion that we're having, I think back to some of the buildings, for instance. Maybe it's a bit easier to understand. We do a functional analysis to understand exactly what it is we're looking at, what the animal looks like, which is, I think, my version of what Councillor Durley is saying. Let's see what the animal looks like. It'll be developed through the Memorandum of Understanding. And, well, because right now, if we were to direct staff to go out and do an RFP,
What are you doing it for?
what would it look like? So, I agree with Councillor Durley that I think the recommendation that's being made here, and others, the recommendation that's being made here is to draft the Memorandum of Understanding, to bring that forward, and I think that will shine a greater light on all aspects of what we're talking about here. What is it that's being proposed that'll add more bones to the skeleton that's there? From that, I think we can keep in mind Councillor Accursi's recommendation regarding either an internal or some sort of RFP out there as an option. But I do agree that I think if we can continue to move ahead and put some meat on the bones, as it were, with a memorandum of understanding, it's a positive direction forward. And then I think it is, if we were to look at a challenge map, it is that last thing, the log jam in the whole thing to continue to move this process forward. Are there any other councillors that would like to comment on this before I call the question? Councillor Accursi?
I'm going to put it on the table to see where it goes. I'd like to make a motion that we defer dealing with the MOU until such time as we have further discussions with respect to this, and can give consideration to structuring an RFP of which the Y could participate.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? There's no seconder, Councillor.
I put it out there.
Thank you. So now to the main motion. I'm going to, unless there's any others, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. So look forward to that information coming back to us at a future meeting. And thank you for your presentation. Thank you for continuing to work with us. We appreciate your presentation. And I neglected to mention early on, Ms. Sandrick, that congratulations to you on your recent Business Leadership Award back in June. Congratulations to you. Thank you very much again for your presentation. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks. Next, we move to the report of our regional councillor, Brian Beatty. Good evening, Councillor Beatty. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council and staff. Have a report before you. I've got about 3 or 4 brief items to comment on. We'll answer questions related to any items that are here. Second item under corporate services, we received a presentation report regarding the deer hunting in Short Hills Provincial Park. We made a recommendation to send a copy of that presentation to the Minister of Natural Resources, along with a request for him not to allow any future hunts due to public safety concerns. It's fairly obvious that there are a number of access points. Some of them are the entry points to the park, but there's many other places where you can park and still maintain access to former trails, etc., and a lot of residential impact. We did cite, I think, in the discussion, some other areas. Wingsley Bog was one that was mentioned as other alternate sites where deer population are quite high, etc. So we'll wait to see what happens from that. Under Public Health and Social Services, I won't go through it in details because there was a newspaper article about this. Just to let you know that we've done in my opinion, a very solid job in maintaining, in particular, the operational budget to be below inflation. Having a request for this number of paramedics increase is a pretty dramatic fiscal challenge for us. And I would say that the response that the council gave, committee and council, was to be somewhat cautious. First of all, rather than taking money direct from taxpayers, it's being taken for the remainder of this year out of reserve account. I know that still came from the taxpayer, but the point being it's not being added to the tax burden at this point in time. There is a provision for $1.1 million to do that during 2015. The advantage of getting the first round of ambulances and paramedics in 2014, that then adds to the base funding from public health for a 50-50 split with the province. So there's some advantage. And in going out, it's hard to say. There was a very strong discussion in terms of what the role is of this council versus the role of the new council in terms of anything beyond 2014 budget. And so the decision was to ask staff to prepare for budget presentations, but the implementation in the second round, with the second round of 16 paramedics and supervisors and so on, will be something that will be looked at with the new council, basically looking at whether they want to do it in 2015 or stage it over at halfway 15, halfway over 16. But it's a very significant, it's the largest operational impact that I've seen in a very short period of time. And actually the numbers I used in the article, I know it was 72 or 74% increase projected for the number of people 75 and older. I'm part of that demographic, or will be. But it's a case where that's a pretty astonishing number of the impact and obviously the need for a greater ambulance service. We've done a pretty good job, probably cut down on the offload delay time by about 60% reduction in that, working with the NHS. But it's a case where quite clearly the call volume has increased dramatically and is trending to increase even more so in the future. So just that is a very big ticket item and something we'll be watching over time. Also want to point out under Public Works, not that it's pertaining to this community, but the idea of funding for bicycle facilities on First Avenue, and there's another location in Welland. Just to bring to council's attention, first of all, they're using bicycle facilities, and I think that's because there's a variety of possibilities. One is, of course, a full-size bicycle lane. The other one is, that you've seen on Hayes Sharrows. The other one is a safe zone, which is smaller, and the other one is paved shoulders. And I'm bringing it to the attention of council because as a cyclist, and knowing that there's a high volume of traffic that go over the escarpment along Effingham, it's unfortunate currently that it's great that it's paved as opposed to tar and chip, but it's a case where council should be aware that the region will pay for fully. The region pay for bicycle facilities on roads that are local roads, but are on the regional network. So something that we should consider. That's not all of Effingham, by the way. Obviously, it's going to take many years and perhaps decades to finally do that. But I'm just asking the council to be aware of that particular option. It's not often that the region is there doing 100% funding, but in this case, it would be, in my view, as a cyclist, some advantage in the future. And the last thing I had started was, no need to go in much detail because it was about Stalwart Guardian. It's a rather major impact, the number of troops that are going to be here, reserves, etc. And I don't think it came out clearly in the presentation. The premise behind it is that it's either enemy forces have taken over the Welland Canal or are in the process of attempting to take over. That's the premise behind their activity in terms of their process that we can. And I think it's important that we know that, and the public knows that large number of troops are going to be there. Because I know today I've had several people talking about the number of cyclists they're seeing. Had to tell some people they're not called bikers, they're called cyclists. But Bella, Quebec is in town with, I think, about 1,700 cyclists altogether. And there's a lot of people saying, where did they all come from? And I'm glad they're here to make the presentation to the troops, because that would be the same reaction I'm certain that the rest of society will have. How come we've got all these armored vehicles and guys jumping out of helicopters at the central airport and so on? But so that's the ones that I want to bring up, but I'll be more than prepared to answer questions regarding others or refer them to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank
you very much, Councillor Beatty, for your presentation. Do any members of council have any questions for Councillor Beatty on any aspects of his report? Thank you. I just want to add on to the EMS discussion, and I think it's similar to a few years ago, Councillor Beatty, you and I promoted quite heavily the addition of an extra ambulance for the Pelham Thorold area because the response times were creeping up in that area. All of regional council supported that. And I think it's similar in this time as well. They're trying to deal with these rising response times, and the best way to do it at this point is with the additional paramedic services. I do note that they are opening, I guess at the end of the month, a new facility in the Niagara-on-Lake area that would also help with that as well, a new hub facility. So there are, just throwing additional resources at it isn't the only answer that's being looked at. We're looking at many different answers, but the one that we're dealing with right now is to add additional ambulances.
There's a new one at the EMS station on the regional property as well. That's across from Brock University. So it's a case where, and I should have mentioned, the caution that we had was partly out of respect for the mandate of the new council, but was also thinking that we'd like to actually see some data. Now, once the 16 paramedics and the 2 supervisors are in place, let's have about a 6 to 8 month view of what impact is that having with regard to the call volume, and do we need to stage faster, or do we need to stage over a longer duration in terms of the second round?
Thank you very much, Councillor. Anything further from members of council? Thank you very much, Councillor Beatty, for your presentation. And it's nice to have a few weeks off. We don't meet, I don't think, until September now. So it's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Lane, that Regional Councillor Beatty's report of August 5th, 2014 be received for information. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you again, Councillor. Talk to you soon. Thank you. Now we move to other matters. It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Minutes of our special meeting of council of July 21st and of the second special meeting of council of July 21st, as well as a regular meeting of council July 21st. Any errors or omissions? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is consent agenda items to be considered in block. I wonder if any members have any items that they'd like to lift for separate consideration. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to lift 11.4.2, relocation of hydropole.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any others? Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, second by Councillor King. The following consent agenda items be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. 1. Recommendations Policy and Priorities Committee from July 21st, including the approval of municipal grants policy, driveway entrance permit policy, and appointments to boards and committees policies as amended. Minutes of the meeting of July 21st as well. Staff reports, there are none. So action correspondence of a routine nature. S. Larmet regarding sidewalks on Pelham Street, and the recommendation is that the correspondence regarding the sidewalks on Pelham Street be received and referred to staff for inclusion in consideration for the 2015 budget deliberations. A very active walker, and she wants additional sidewalks on Pelham. The next is, the item that Councillor Kersey lifted, so we'll deal with that soon. The next is the Fonthill District Kinsman Club regarding an in-kind financial support, that the correspondence from the Fonthill District Kinsman Club regarding in-kind financial support be received, and that staff be directed to provide the Kinsman with a copy of the approved municipal grants policy. Now we have information correspondence items. We have information regarding the Ontario Municipal Board order approving, finally, the official plan for the town of Pelham. Thank you. Next, we have information regarding the CIBC Run for the Cure coming up in September. A thank you letter from Christopher Bilodeau for council and the town's sponsorship, scholarship at E.L. Crosley, and information regarding our dwindling quarterly repayment from the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. We also have committee minutes for information from the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee of April 2nd and May 29th. Any discussion regarding any of those items? I just want to add to the Kinsman Club letter. I think Ms. Van Ravensway has had a discussion with representatives of the Kinsman Club, and they understand that what they're asking is, we're actually increasing it, the potential quite substantially. They're suggesting that the $2,000 allowance has been in place for a number of years, and I believe under the policy, there's a potential for up to 5,000. Is that correct? Ms. Van Rooyen, can you just fill in? You did have a discussion with
Yes, the president of the Kinsman Club was in the office, and I did explain the new policy to him. He's taken it. That was after the fact that he's written the letter, and he seems to be quite happy.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Anything else and on the items under consent? Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And Councillor Kersey, you lifted the item, and the motion is Silvio and Carlos Sion, 777 Canberra Road. That correspondence dated July 30th from Sylvia and Carlo, am I saying that name right? Sarcone, regarding the Fenwick Downtown Beautification Initiative to be received, and the council approved the relocation of a hydro pole in front of the property known municipally as 777 Canberra Road to the north of the sidewalk to a position closest to its current location. And the council approved the relocation of a hydro transformer onto the property known municipally as 777 Canberra Road to a position closest to its current proposed location in front of the Maple Acre Library branch, and staff be directed to take the necessary steps required to obtain an easement from the owners of said property, with all costs to be borne by the town of Pelham. Councillor Kersey, you lifted it?
Yes, I did, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Now, I wasn't here at the last council meeting, so, and I couldn't find it in the minutes that there was direction given to staff to pursue this. So I'm a little bit surprised to see that. We did have this discussion at the Beautification Committee meeting when the issue came up. We unfortunately didn't have quorum, so we couldn't make an official motion, but the consensus of the committee was that it seemed to be more like a pig in a poke. It was a lot to do about not a whole lot, and spending a significant amount of money. I suppose relative to 4 million, it's not a lot, but projected $11,465 for the easement, and I understand about 10,000 plus for movement of the pole because it's already been wired up and proceeding. So we're up to $22,000 to move a pole 4 feet and move a transformer a few feet. So I'm just questioning the fiscal responsibility of doing that when the next pole down the street is exactly in the same position that this pole is in. It just happens to be a few feet more outside the beautification zone. So I am questioning the advisability of pursuing this with an expenditure of in the 20,000 plus range. And so I just wanted to bring it up and have some discussion around that before we go ahead and just kind of cover it in a consent agenda.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. I think we received, I don't know where it is, Mr. CAO, but there was information regarding the costs, and then also maybe some discussion about how this got here. I think this got here, Councillor, because of a letter. Councillor Ribiak did raise it at the last council meeting, and council received a response, but then this item of correspondence was received. Mr. CAO, can you?
Councillor
I just wondered about the amounts that the councillor was highlighting. Can you just highlight that, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The original idea was to, understanding that we now had the support or the permission of the property owners to relocate the transformer and the hydro pole, that we would look at the options. If the original, speaking to the hydro pole, the original plan was to move it considerably, which would require an easement and a number of the things that the councillors raised as far as expenditures go. The pole can't be moved as originally thought, but it can be moved slightly in its sort of existing location, and there are minimal fees for that. So there is not an additional $11,000 for the pole. That amount of money is it would be total, and that is primarily for the relocation of the transformer. That would be relocated from directly in front of Maple Acre Library, which I can confirm has been a contentious point for many of the residents in Fenwick, particularly with feedback from the Maple Acre meetings that we've been having lately. and it's desirous of the community to have that moved out away, and that would be an approximate cost of $10,000.
Okay, so the total costs are the 11.4 that's there, not an additional 10 on top of that, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor.
thank you for that clarity.
So that's
So does
different
that- does that
information. Well,
provide-
that's different information that was provided by Mr. Mantle at the last council meeting. He advised that he had had a quote from Ontario Hydro that it was going to be $10,000 to move that pole 4 feet.
Mr. CEO?
Is that not correct?
You know, I believe that the original expense was to relocate the pole a considerable distance from where it is. I don't recall off the top of my head how many feet it was, but the pole can be moved slightly in its current location, and there would be minimal expense for that. Perhaps Councillor Ribiac can add to that, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Ribiac, can you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I can. I drafted that letter that Mr. Cohen's signed as a result of my involvement in the issue at the request of residents in Fenwick. My understanding is, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. CEO may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that in the initial envisioning of the project, that pole was to be moved some considerable distance, as Mr. CEO has indicated, and also that the transformer was meant to be in the location that's being proposed as a result of this letter. But that for whatever reason, and it really doesn't matter what the reasons are, but for whatever reason, an agreement could not be achieved with to allow those things to happen. My understanding is that when the Beautification Committee did meet, albeit without quorum, as Councillor Kersey has indicated, the residents in Fenwick who were participating in that were essentially under the opinion, as I understand it, and I wasn't there, so I can't speak directly to it, but my understanding from them is that they accepted information that the stuff could not be moved. Neither the transformer nor the pole could be moved from the locations that were staked as a result of the agreement that could not be reached. And, you know, they were polite, I guess, and they accepted it. But I'm not sure that when I asked any of them, but you agreed, that any of them said, well, we didn't agree. What we were told was it couldn't be moved, and we kind of accepted it. In discussions that we had subsequent to all of that, and a couple of weeks ago, when I was asked whether I knew, as a councillor, I suppose I'm supposed to know these things, why the transformer continued to be in front of Maple Acre and why the pole wasn't moved, I said it was because easements could not be obtained. And it wasn't but a half an hour to an hour after that conversation that I was informed, but wait a minute, easements can be achieved. And the proof of that, I guess, is that we have a letter that says that, in fact, permission has been granted to move the poles to the positions and the transformer to the position that was originally envisioned for them. Well, perhaps not the pole. The pole was meant to be somewhere further in, but the position being proposed for the pole at this point is one that provides a greater measure of safety and still manages to meet the objectives of the revitalization. But more importantly, the transformer can be moved from in front of Maple Acre to the immediately adjacent property, and that would free up a considerable amount of the concern that residents in Fenwick have with regard to what would be happening in front of Maple Acre. So when we learned that permission, in fact, could be obtained, it was committed to paper and submitted and brought here, I guess, to determine whether council has the will to put those two issues to bed in the original positions that were envisioned. The pole is being moved out of a sense of safety more than anything else. That it is the narrowest part of the street. Other poles along Canberra, of course, are on the street side of the sidewalk and represent hazards in and of themselves, but this is the one that will be at the narrowest point, and it will always also be at the gateway to Fenwick. The transformer is the greater issue. The greater issue being that the transformer was being positioned away from the front of Maple Acre, makes the whole aspect of Maple Acre an awful lot easier for people to appreciate. So again, these were the positions, or at least as far as the transformer is concerned, the original position envisioned, and it was only put into the place from which it's being moved as a result of the work that went ahead. I would suggest that it would be a good idea to put it where it was originally meant to be, and to remove some of the hazard with respect to the pole. I don't know how we can go wrong with either of those.
Thank you very much.
Cost, if I may just add, the costs would have been in the original budget had that permission for an easement been obtained. So we're really talking about the amount of money that we would have been approving in any case.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Others? Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, necessary procedures that might be required. Is there any consideration that needs to be given to the Zirconis for the easement, or to anybody else through Hydro or anything? Is that an added cost as well? The physical cost of moving it is minimal. Is there any costs, either financial or procedural or legislative, that may be a legacy to this move?
Thank you. Mr. CAO?
The cost to remunerate the landowner for the easement is included in that $11,000 amount. And it would be a one-time payment, the same way that we would do any easement agreement.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Others? Just for the information of council, I do acknowledge you, Councillor Papp. Just in terms of the location of the pole, I had a good look at it, and you can sort of see on the diagram that we have, which is sort of Christmas colors, green and red, the road does move to the left at that point, and I recall that the particular pole, this is replacing a pole, that's why it's a new pole, replacing a pole that was hit probably about 1.5 years ago, because it is on the curve there as you go in, and it caused a power outage, etc. So it is, I think, slightly different in terms of location to other poles in the vicinity. As I said, I had a good look at it, so that's information for council. Councillor Lane?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under this summary of estimated costs of the easement, it has a number of $7,500 for property. Is that what I understand for the land that we're going to put this on?
Mr. CAO?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure which
Right here on the thing.
you're referring to. Oh, sorry, on the notes.
It says property, $7,500.
Yes, that's correct. That's the fee that I was speaking to Councillor Durley's question, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Could I ask where that number was arrived at? To me, I mean, I'd like to see this thing move, but to me, it seems like an awful excessive amount of money for a 3 by 3 meter piece of land. I think we get very expensive property, considering other things we're going through in town. I don't know what kind of precedent this would set if we start paying this kind of money.
Mr. CAO?
It's a budgeted amount, Mr. Mayor, extrapolated from other typical easements that we've had to obtain. But you'll notice the item above that is the appraisal. That will determine what the actual cost will be. That's simply a budget estimate. So if council is concerned with the total budget, then I might suggest that if you consider to pass this, you put an upset limit on the budget amount, so that we would have to come back to you if there was, if we were to exceed that amount.
Thank you. Councillor Lane?
Yeah, just my concern is when we look at this amount on a piece of paper and we look at the size of the piece of property, it leads me to wonder what might happen in the future on other land that we may want when the people out there see this kind of number for such a small piece of property. That's my concern.
Thank you, Councillor. Others? Mr. CO, comment?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify that the easement is in perpetuity, so it would remain until such time as that transformer was removed. It's currently a vacant lot, so it would also have impact on the development of that lot with the transformer there. So that's why we would conduct the appraisal, and then we would get the appraised value. It's not a number that we're negotiating with a property owner on. It's what the professional appraiser would recommend the cost be for that particular easement. So I can't confirm it's going to be 75. That's just a budget number that we put in to extrapolate what we think the best estimate would be for that.
Okay, thank you. Others for a first time? Councillor Pat? No?
No,
Yes?
I'm going to defer, I need to get some technical advice, just so I'm clear of what I heard. Just so, Councillor Ribiak, did you write this letter?
I did indeed. I drafted it. I didn't sign it. I drafted it to reflect the wishes of those who were participating in the discussion.
All right, I'll defer until it's the first I've ever heard of that being done.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
I'll get some technical advice on it.
Okay. Councillor Kersey, you signaled you wanted to.
Yeah, thank you,
speak
Mr. Mayor.
again.
I'd like to, I'll bring this to a head. I would be willing to support this, provided we add the phrase in there that the total cost of the move not to exceed what is projected here at $11,465. So that includes hydro moving the pole, reconnecting the pole, the acquisition of the land, the appraisal of the land, et cetera, all in, all done, not to exceed $11,600.
Okay,
And I would move that
Okay.
amendment if I could.
all right, thank you. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Lane? Discussion to that amendment? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment is carried, and so now the motion is everything I read out earlier, with the caveat that all costs be borne by the town of Pelham with an upset limit, we'll say, of 11,600, I think is what you said, Councillor. Are we, any other further discussion regarding the matter? I think the clerk has the number here. It's the number that's estimated there? Okay, thank you. Anything further? Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried as amended. The next is presentation consideration of reports. Staff reports requiring action. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King, that the issue summary report Recreation Services reorganization be received and the council approve the reorganization structure within recreation, culture, and wellness as outlined in the report. Any discussion? Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it makes perfect sense, and it certainly looks like it will increase efficiencies in the department. It's well thought out, and congratulations to whoever had the idea. It's a great one, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor. Others? Councillor King?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think it's a well-drawn-out plan as well. I'm just a wee bit concerned about what succession plans will be in place given this change. I mean, you know, we've identified that the number of events has increased, and who knows what other events may formulate as well. And there's no doubt in my mind that the department has a heck of a workload and is probably understaffed. So increasing the staff by one person is a great idea, but I am concerned about the toll that the time demands place on not only the director, but the rest of the staff. So I guess in a way I'm questioning, is one staff sufficient? And I am very concerned about succession plans, given the elimination of that supervisory role.
Thank you. Ms. Van Ravensway? Oh, you can answer that? I thought you said Vicky can answer that. Mr. CAO wants to answer that. Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Mayor,
CAO.
I'll take a crack at it, and if I leave anything out, I'm sure my colleague can help fill it in. Just from a historical perspective, Mr. Mayor, the management position, or assistant manager position, I guess it was, originally has existed for quite some time. And when I looked at the reorganization of the organization 2 years ago, was one thing I noted was there was a lot of management positions that I didn't feel needed to be there. And there was a lot of management supervisory positions that were actually working positions in the field that for some reason had supervisory responsibilities, which to me didn't make a lot of sense. In a small department with 4 people, 2 of them don't need to be managers. So this was sort of baggage. I think the position of the assistant manager was kind of leftover baggage from that reorg, is, and there was pay issues, and, we had an employee that was long-serving that, we're just not going to demote and those sorts of things. So when the position became open, we wanted to ensure that we did a decent analysis on it to make sure we were getting the best bang for our buck. And my first thought, and it wasn't my idea, it was somebody else's, but my first thought was to say that, kind of like cell division, we can take that one person and divide it into 2 for the same amount of money, and that made a ton of sense to me. The other point was that we were able to get rid of that management element and create programming job descriptions, which is what we need, and all the while doing it within our existing 2014 budget, and that was the considerations that were made. If there is a requirement for additional resources, human resources, then that would be something that would be considered in the 2015 budget, and we would have to put together the appropriate business case for council to assess.
Thank you. Ms. Van Ravensway, do you want to add anything to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think CAO has covered it.
I'm just going to ask you, Ms. Van Ravensway, when the councillor spoke about succession planning, you made a comment to me earlier today about the staff that have been in this position and they've moved on to other organizations. Can you just, maybe that's the succession planning that the councillor was alluding to? I don't think so.
No. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We were just reminiscing on other staff that we've had in the past that have had the same position. Tracy Dranth has moved on to the City of London, and Katie Thorpe has moved on to the City of Calgary, and now Jessica Wesolowski Ruddle has accepted a position with the City of Burlington. So
Thank you.
it is what it is.
I don't think that was the succession planning that the councillor had in mind, but invariably it seemed that position allowed that type of succession planning.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor, anything further?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Others? Councillor Papp?
Well, I'll make it very quick. I agree full-heartedly. The more people we have in direct delivery of services, and I also concur with the CAO and the director. For this reason, well, not this reason only, we're about to embark on a major development of a multi-recreational community center. And having spoken to other individuals in other municipalities, the scope of operation activities is going to expand. And our ability to handle that is going to require us, and I just was given some examples of that, and I kind of got my antenna up, and I couldn't agree, Mr. CEO. It's going to change because you may be finding yourself stretched to the limit as it is, and that requires us to do, as we've done here on many occasions, is set out the resource plans we need for that, because it's going to come to us very quickly, and we need to be in a position to do that. You probably even see that this year with another component that we've added, that you're going to find that time's going to be, it's going to take up quite a bit of time. So I agree with the reorganization full-heartedly.
Thank you, Councillor. Others? I'm just going to comment because in a more general way as opposed to specifically, I think we've done this with other positions as well, and sometimes folks from the community approach me, and I'm sure other members of council, and say, your staff levels have risen a little bit, and yet our budgets are still well in line, and our budgets are very good, and the increases are low. So this is another example of that happening, where one position with all the benefits and everything else on it, and the overtime and all that, can turn into 2 positions for the same budgeted amount. So I think it's important for us to think about that, and I appreciate the CAO's leadership on that and other staff thinking about that, so that we can hopefully deliver even more service, even more of the great service that we have. but still do it in a very, very cost-effective way. So I wanted to highlight that because of some feedback I've received from the community. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Next, we move to bylaws. It's been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor King, that Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaw, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass the same, and the mayor and clerk be under hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. Bylaw 3527, 2014, being a bylaw to establish development charges for the corporation of the Town of Pelham, and to repeal bylaw 3049, 2009. I'm going to turn to the treasurer. There were some changes to the bylaw. It's the one that's being proposed here is the one that was circulated. Is that correct? There were some gremlins in the bylaw.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it was the bylaw was sent to us earlier in a PDF format. We asked for the Word document so that we could put the bylaw number on it. When they sent the Word document, they sent the one with the area-specific rates. So it's been changed since Thursday of last week to be the bylaw that needs to be in place with the combined rate.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that clarity. Anything further to this, to the bylaw? And I guess the final question is, this comes into force and effect once approved. Is that correct?
Force in effect August 18th.
Okay. I think it said immediately.
It's at the bottom of the bylaw. It will come into effect when the other bylaw is repealed, which is finishes on August 17th.
We'll get the clerk to, I don't have a copy of it in front of me.
I think there was a notation through Mr. Mayor in the bylaw that it was to come into force and effect the day after passing.
I read that too.
August 6th. It says? Yeah. Okay. So it's, is that?
Yes, as long as the first bylaw is repealed at that time, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. I presume Mr. Glover will have informed the development community on that change. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Rivak, second by Councillor King. The council recess the in-camera portion of the meeting and reconvene immediately following the committee of the whole meeting scheduled for later this evening. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. That's what we tend to do when we have a committee of the whole and we have a closed session. So this council meeting has been recessed. We'll take a brief 5-minute break and then we will start committee of the whole. Thank you.